You're listening to Raceway Ministries Today. Thanks for joining us for Raceway Ministries Today. In just a few moments, we're going to give you the latest of what's going on in motorsports outreach through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. We're glad to have you here on our podcast with Raceway Ministries Today. My name is Roger Marsh. I'm the Executive Director of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. And Raceway Ministries Today is just one of the opportunities that we have to connect with each other and to hear each other's stories about what God has going on in the world of motorsports and ministry. We'd love to invite every one of you to connect with us. You can reach us at racewayministries.org, that's our website, or you can go to Facebook, National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and interact with us there. By the same name, National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, you can go to YouTube and find our YouTube channel and download some of the other podcasts and listen in on what's going on. We also would encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. When you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to get notifications whenever we have new podcasts coming up. But I'm very excited today. Our podcast on this day, March the 12th, 2021, is with David McNew. David recently attended our National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries annual conference, which was virtual, and we had pretty good luck with that. It was kind of an unusual thing doing a virtual annual conference, but we had several people on the screen, and David was one of them. David serves as chaplain at Elk Creek Dragway in Elk Creek, Virginia, and he's got lots of other opportunities coming up that he'll tell us about as we get into the podcast today. But David, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our podcast.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for this opportunity to be part of National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries.
Well, we're glad to have you as part of Raceway Ministries and very excited about the work that you have going on up there in Virginia. And I know you've got lots to talk about in terms of your ministry to the drag racers and the ministries that you've had going on recently and the new opportunities that are coming up. But I'd like to begin with just asking you to share with us a little bit about how your walk with Christ began. Can you do that?
Yes, sir. For most folks, I was considered a late bloomer. I was in racing a lot, but also my favorite thing in my life was football. I played 12 years. I coached football for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah. In that, one of the gentlemen, or one of the young fellows that was on my team, a good buddy of mine in high school, invited me to a Fellowship of Christian Athlete outing that we had right near our home. And I went there. Man, we had a day full of just fun and excitement, different games and things. And then that night, they presented the gospel. And it's the first time I'd been in and out of Vacation Bible School, didn't really grow up, in a Christian home. It was a very moralistic home, not a Christian home.
Okay.
And then this was the first time I'd actually heard the gospel, and I responded to that. And on September the 15th, 1986, 4 days before I turned 16, I was baptized.
Oh.
So, and it was 1 month before that in August when I accepted the Lord as my Savior. And man, it's been all kinds of things since then, but that was the beginning.
Okay. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm glad that God, by His grace, captured you at a pivotal point in time as a teenager. And as it turns out, God had great plans for you that you didn't even know about at the time. And part of those plans included getting into motorsports and racing. So how about racing? How'd you get into it? And motorsports ministry, how'd you get involved in that?
Well, the racing thing was part of my family. I mean, I've got pictures of when I was 3 years old at a drag race at Bristol Dragway.
Oh, okay.
Both my uncles drag raced. One went from drag racing into circle track. So we had a drag strip 30 minutes one way from the house. I had a dirt track 30 minutes the other way from the house.
Boy, you were surrounded by it.
Oh, yeah, loved it. When you grow up in the southwestern part of Virginia, you either played football or you went racing.
Gotcha.
So it's been around my life. And then as an older teen, and like I said, I played football a lot. My dad tried his best to keep me away from racing, for multiple reasons. reasons, but I had it in my blood, always had it there. And then I got married, 20 years old. My wife has graciously put up with me. This year will be 31 years.
Oh, yeah. And, there you go. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yes. And then in the mid-90s, 1995, I had my uncles help me build a 79 Malibu car to go drag racing with.
Cool.
And we finally got it done, and I took it and raced it some in 95. And then how I got into Raceway Ministry is where I'm headed with this.
Okay.
In 1996, I started going to Richmond Dragway. The racetrack then opened up in March, and I went up there, and it was my second trip to the track that year. And most of the time I went by myself, and later on my family would show up.
Okay.
The second race that year was the turning point. And I had no clue in 1996 that this would be my turning point. But as I look back now, I understand it. In 1996, I went there and my car broke down. Had to load it up. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Lou Edmonds, Goo Goo. And most folks that may hear this from Richmond Dragway would definitely remember him. He raced there for years. And on that fateful day, I went and talked to him before first round, and unfortunately he made it down the track and had an accident, and he unfortunately passed away.
Oh, my goodness.
I was the third person to him, and the way the track was made, at top end, the track was above where the cars and people would be at. So I'm standing with him, and I'm looking down, and they're holding back his family. And the family cannot get to him. They have no clue what's happening.
Sure.
And as I look back on it and not even realizing it, when God finally called me into ministry, racing then became my ministry. There was a lot of people at the drag strip in 2005 at Richmond that folks passed away and was hurting and had questions.
Right.
And I just stepped in and started answering questions. And I sent Johnny Davis, who then was just the promoter at Richmond Dragway. I said, dude, would you be interested in having a chaplain come? I said, I would love to minister to the families of the racers. And he jumped all over that. And in 2006, 10 years later, from that fateful day, I went there for the purpose to serve that track, serve those people. And my main goal, main reason of being there, was to bring the gospel, to bring that. But also, if there ever was another time that an incident happened at the track, that family became my ministry to get them to the hospital, to take care of them in the days that would come ahead and keep that contact with them.
You bet. Wow.
And so that was for me, I didn't even realize 10 years later that would be the thing. But, just realizing that, seeing that. And now I was at Richmond Dragway for 7 years. We went from 2006, started that full season, and we finished up in 2012 there because we moved away. But I'm going to tell you, there was a lot of lives that were changed there. And I know for a fact, and the other racers, the ministries, they will tell you the same thing. There's lives that was changed that we don't even know about.
Well, David, God works all things together. And we know that from Romans 8:28. And when God touched you as a 16-year-old, and then when you got involved in racing, God knew that accident was coming. And God knew that it would be a moment that he would touch your heart and help you to see a desperate need in the midst of a motorsport activity that people love, and yet tragedy comes to it pretty frequently, more often than we would like.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a way that God has of getting everyone's attention to let them know that he wants to be in the midst of all that, and especially in the crisis times. Many people who want to get involved in ministry, particularly racing ministry, they think of all the other things. Hey, I get to lead the invocation before the race. I might get to be on TV. I'll get to preach a chapel service or do a prayer at a driver's meeting. And they don't think about the fact that it may be crisis and it may be trauma that's the most critical need at the raceway, and that might be the thing that needs to be a priority. Sounds like you were baptized into Raceway Ministries pretty strongly with that first incident, and yet it tempered you and helped you to kind of get a good perspective on what was needed in general at the raceway in terms of ministry. Sounds like you had fruitful years there at Richmond Dragway for sure.
Absolutely. It was unreal.
Well, let's talk about ministry in drag racing. you and I both know that the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries as an organization, particularly in the earlier years, from the early 1970s on up, really up through the 1990s and even beyond, has mostly been at circle tracks. We've mostly done fan ministry. We've been involved in some road courses, both NASCAR and IndyCar. We've been involved with ARCA. We've been at dirt tracks. We've been at short asphalt ovals, but really very little drag racing, especially those venues that are exclusively drag racing. You know, there's drag racing out at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and over at Charlotte and so forth, and so we've been involved in those things. And Racers for Christ has been very strong in providing ministry in drag racing, NHRA and others, and that's been going on for a long time. And as a Raceway Ministry leader with National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, I got to tell you, I've had a lot of respect and had a lot of friends within the Racers for Christ community for years. But they've basically done drag racing. We've basically done circle track and NASCAR and that kind of thing. And even though racing is just racing, whether it's karting, open wheels, stock cars, drag racing, and even though ministry is just ministry, sharing Jesus with others and serving people in His name. Admittedly, drag racing is different. You have been around both of them, circle track and drag racing. What would you say about differences and similarities between the two?
Well, you've mentioned the similarities. Similarities is being able to minister to the people in both aspects. You've got to realize you're going to minister to people. You know, you're going to come across all different types of people, all sorts of people.
Sure.
You will find a lot of the short circle tracks, probably a lot like the drag racing that I deal with week to week. They haven't lost one aspect there, and that is camaraderie.
Okay.
If a racer goes down the track and something breaks, by the time he gets that car back to his trailer, back to his area of parking, there are usually 6 to 10 more teams of people that have shown up. Okay, what do we need to do to get you back running? And they're probably their competitors.
Yeah.
And used to, I remember circle track, NASCAR back in the early 80s. It was the same way. You know, if somebody broke something, people jumped from other teams and jumped in and helped them. But it's not like that today, unfortunately, as much. You know, and so, but when you go to these short tracks, and I even see it now on some of the short tracks, and I've been at Motor Mile Speedway helping a guy just a couple years ago in circle track. You know, if you broke something, they come by, a couple would come by and just see, but it's like there's so much secrecy. But in drag racing, there's not. It's a family affair. The great thing about the drag racing, especially at the local level now, you start racing junior dragsters when you're 8 years old.
Right.
So you can imagine coming there, mom, dad, and the kid, and they come for a purpose too. Everybody's involved in this from one end of your family to the other. When you go circle track racing, it's usually one person, you know, it could be the mom driving, but that's usually what you have is one. Where when we go to the track, mom, dad, and the kids all have their race cars.
Okay.
The ministry at Elk Creek, even at Richmond Dragway, was to the racers, to their families, because all of them are involved in it. And then, you know, in the middle of that, those fans that do come out there where you're at a short track, well, they're friends with most of the folks at the track. So you get to minister to every single person that's there.
Well, what I hear you saying then is when you walk into a place like Elk Creek Dragway, in terms of opportunity, you have access to anyone and everyone, competitors, families, fans. I mean, you immediately walk into a world where there may be an opportunity to reach any individual person on the property for that particular night or weekend, because it sounds like they're all interconnected somehow, family, friends, and they're all kind of in it together.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listen, if we were to follow you out to Elk Creek Dragway, and I know you guys have events coming up. I got the schedule for 2021 off their website. You guys have Test and Tune on Friday, April 2nd, and then points race number 1, Saturday, April 3rd. So all that's coming up pretty quick. If we were to follow you out there for that weekend, what would we see what would we experience along with you? I guess, in other words, what is a weekend in the life of David McNew like out at Elk Creek?
Well, we're still developing the overall how that looked. It took about, believe it or not, it took a full 2 years, 2 full seasons at Richmond Dragway to define a full weekend, a full coming to the racetrack and what you would see, what you would hear.
Okay.
At Elk Creek, I actually just got this started last July.
Oh, wow. Right in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. And it was opportune time to do it. But what my plans are and what we're shooting for and what we're working towards is to get there. They usually start qualifying, and they'll usually have a couple rounds of qualifying, and they usually start that around 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. It will depend on how they operate the track. But my goal is to be there at 11.
Okay.
And those guys and girls, the majority of them are already there. Most of them come Friday night to the test and tune. They bring their RVs. That's why it's a family, because when they get done at 10 o'clock test and tuning, well, they'll just hang out at their RVs, watch TV, they're just hanging out.
Sure.
So Saturday morning, most of them are there. I'm going to roll in, set up. I got a sound system that I have, and I sent you the picture. It's now on Facebook, a picture of a pulpit.
Yeah.
That Richmond Dragway built for me, and the racers there built, and it's got a set of headers on it. But I'm going to be taking that. We'll do a little message, have my wife or some other folks sing us a song or two.
Okay.
And we try to do that in an area where we can get the folks to come and have a seat.
Sure.
And like I said, when I started at Richmond Dragway doing that, I didn't have but like 15 coming to the service. But after about the 3rd year, 4th year, I had 60, 70 folks in the stand.
Wow.
And we packed them out. And that was an hour before the racing even started at Richmond. And
Okay.
so it takes a little time for them to get in tune with what you're trying to do.
Sure.
So that's what we're working towards, is have that. But the ministry for that part is just presenting the gospel, giving them a message of hope, giving them the message of Christ, But the ministry then, when we close all that down and everything's closed up, that's when real ministry starts.
Okay.
And we walk that track from one end to the other, trailer to trailer, at least 4 times. And we just go around, we talk to them about their cars, we talk to them about life, we just talk to them about everything.
Yeah.
And, I open my Bible up when I'm there, and usually as I tell people, you better have the Bible hid in your heart when you go walking, because you never know what question you're going to be asked.
Boy, that's true.
But at the same time, like I said, July was the first time I started this, and I had racers that I walk up to, and they figured out that we were there to minister to them, and they're like, hey, we got a cooler of water. Whenever you're walking, it's hot, just grab a water, and just don't even ask us, just grab the water. And I mean, these folks are very open to this.
You bet.
So we walk and talk, and then, we do the invocation, and, there's a national anthem. But our ministry is from the time we get there up until first round of eliminations, which is usually we've got 3 to 4 hours of real ministry that we can do, because they're basically testing and tuning while they're qualified. It's not serious.
Oh, yeah.
But once we do that invocation, I sort of back away from, being a person that is going out there and pushing the envelope of, normal talk, because these guys and girls, they get focused. It's about point. They're there for a race. But I do go to the staging lane.
Yeah.
As they come in, I walk by, and I let them know up front, as I walk by, I'm praying for you, your car, and your trip down that track. And, if you want me just to pray specifically for you and with you, reach your hand out the window, and I'll stop and I'll pray for them.
Wow, what a great approach, David. What I hear you saying there is so important, and I'm afraid we don't always promote this and teach this. It's a vital point to be made. You have to find a balance. You're working real hard to build relationships with these people, and obviously through your chapel service and then walking through the pit area and the trailers and taking advantage of their water. And if you're like me, some of the best barbecue I've ever had has been next to somebody's hauler while they're out there eating. They say, hey, preacher, come over here and grab you a rib. You do all that and you're building relationships, but once that invocation and national anthem take place, it's roll up your sleeves, it's go time. And you have to find the balance of building relationships and then backing away and give them space to do what they're out there for. And it sounds like you have gotten that down pat. And I think that's so important. But also being available and letting them know that you are available when the heat's on, when the competition's getting tough and when they're busy and they're in the midst of the grind of competing and racing. For them to know that you're there, boy, that's so important too. So to me, that speaks of having a great awareness of how the venue operates its event and being sensitive to the flow of the schedule, and then yet just being available and doing what you can to minister as you have opportunity. How long did it take you to catch on to that and learn that? Is that something that happened pretty quickly, or did you learn that over a period of time?
Roger, I don't know if you're going to remember this.
Okay.
In 2004, you and I met at Richmond International Raceway. You did a speech there. You did a sort of a introduction to it. You were in a small church in Texas. You flew in and you talked with us. And it was a training session there with the folks at Richmond International.
Right.
And there was a gentleman there that worked with Motor Racing Outreach that was a great friend of mine, Steve Vaughn.
Yes.
And he was with Motor Racing Outreach, which dealt, he was with Junie Dunleavy's team.
Yes.
And I went to his church, and me and him sat and we talked about ministry. In 2004 and 2005, I did this raceway for the circle track as a chaplain for you guys for those 2 years before I started at the Red Line Ministries at Richmond Dragway.
Okay.
So I had already met you before, but he gave me a thing. He told me one time, he said, listen, so many people want to get in the pits just so they can see the drivers and get something from them. He said, I'm there to serve them, not for them to serve me.
Yeah.
So he told me that, and it was either 2004 or 2005, and I remember that. And so when I went to Richmond Dragway, I said, okay, I'm here to serve. I'm not here for them to give me anything. I'm here just like Jesus is for us.
Exactly.
What is that I'm going to bring to the table? So I had to learn. And another thing. I worked with the track owner, Johnny Davis. When I started there in 2006, they had most of their races, like March and April and into May, they would have just races on Sunday. And then they finished the year with their last 9 races on Sunday. And I said, I'm in church. I'm doing what I do for my local church. I said, it's hard for me to be here on Sundays. I said, do you think next year we can work something out on Saturdays? He said, absolutely. So next year they had 2 Sunday races, the first one and the last one. They made all of them Saturdays. And then the third year we did our ministry, all of them changed to Saturdays. The time changed. And it was really, as he put it, all helping the cause of the ministry.
Oh, wow.
So we made some changes. We were actually able to speak into that, but that was the only change that I asked for. But I had to learn, what do you do? When do you do this? Just ask questions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I know for me, I looked at it, I had a car, and I helped guys with circle track cars and helped them in drag racing. I knew when it come time to first round, or when you line it up for the real race, it's the real deal. And you do back away. So just growing up around racing itself and learning that early on, I did that. So I wanted to be able to plug in to say, hey, I'm here. And here's something. I got about 500 stories I could tell. But, there is one thing that racing people hate when they go to a racetrack, and that's a rain delay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But at Richmond Dragway, I had some of my racers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th year of that ministry that was like, man, I am begging for rain today. They would come to me and say, I'm begging for rain today. But you're here, and when it rains, I need you in my trailer. And it was, so ministry was on,
You bet.
And, wow, they're begging for rain. Who does that?
No kidding. Well, something that you've said really triggers a thought in my mind. If you grow up around racing, and if you've been around racing, especially as a racer, you catch on to those things, like when the times are intense and when it's time to hang out, that kind of thing. And what I would say to our listeners is, if you grew up around racing, or if you've been around it and seen it from the racer's perspective, you get it. But if there's someone out there that might be interested in doing ministry at a racetrack and they haven't been around the sport, or they didn't grow up in it, or they've never been a racer, you need to really be sensitive to the schedule and to what's going on and tailor your ministry to that, because it's going to make a big difference in terms of the opportunities. Sounds like you learned that a long time ago, and it's paid great dividends in your ministry, both at Richmond and now out there at Elk Creek. David, what would would you say are keys to effective ministry in the drag racing world? Now, one thing that I've kind of established in my mind is the drag racing world is not that different from the circle track world, especially at the local level. And even at the professional level within HRA compared to NASCAR, for example, those probably are very similar in terms of the people and what the schedules are and that kind of thing. But one of the things that I would ask you would be, when you're out there in ministry to those folks, what would you boil it down to in terms of a couple of key elements?
Well, it really depends on if this is a ministry that you've had going for a time. You got some, not just rapport, but you've got some association with folks. But if you're starting the ministry, let's look at it from the aspect, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to start it. What is it that I need to know?
Yeah, good.
One, I would say for most folks, you need to be available when they're available. Your availability is key.
Yeah.
Number two, if you go in and you're a pastor or, you're there to talk to them about Jesus, get to know the people, love on them. The one thing about drag racing and even circle track, know things about the cars, know what it means, in drag racing, you need to know what it means to dial in, you need to know what it means to tire pressures. If you know some things about the thing that you're talking to them about and they start talking to you in their lingo, allows you a quicker inside track to having communication. So in other words, I'm not walking around with a Bible in my hand and go, hey, look at this verse right here. What do you think?
Yeah.
And instead of coming at them early on with that, build a rapport with them where they're at. It's sort of no different than the church. I mean, you go out and talk to people. Go to where they're at. Meet them at their level.
Yes.
And I promise you, when you meet them where they're at, they will come around and they will start asking you questions. And if you're like me, you're going to be asked a lot of questions you don't have answers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The key is availability. And then when you're available, get to know, ask the questions about their cars. I mean,
you bet.
Trust me, the girls and the guys, they really want to tell you about their car.
Oh, yeah.
It's unique. And take notes if you have to.
Yeah.
And another one is, I would say, don't go in narrow-minded on who you're going to minister to. It goes back to availability, and you're out there talking. Don't go in and say, all I'm going to do is work with the youth, or I'm just going to work with these folks. Make it open to where anybody and everybody can be part of that ministry in some way that you get to touch.
Yeah, you bet.
Those are three things at a shorter track drag racing that my mind I set out to do.
Boy, that's good stuff, David. I mean, those things just hit the mark big time. Everything that you described in those 3 points, previous parts of our conversation here today, just back up those things that you have learned along the way. What great information, not only for people who are interested in getting into it, but it's a great reminder for those of us who have been doing it for a long time. So good points. What about officials at the drag strip, the staff? What about relationships and ministry to those people? What are some of the key things to remember about relating to the people that aren't the competitors, that are not the families, that are not the pit crew, they're not the fans? There are the officials and the staff and the law enforcement people and those folks. How about ministry to them?
Well, at Elk Creek, those are the first folks that I try to do everything I can to get to know.
Yeah.
Because they are going to pull the longest hours. They're there at break of day. They shut the track down.
Yep.
Like your racers, there's a 3 or 4 hour window that you can literally talk to them and, it's not really interrupted.
Yeah.
Well, when these workers are at the track, when they're there, it's on, And so you find moments where there's breaks in the action and you just sort of slide in. The greatest thing that I've been able to do for these folks is make a trip to the concession stand for them because they can't leave their post, and just go get them drinks and food, bring that back, and just stand and encourage them in the job they're doing. Say, hey, it's hot. They're out here and they're doing their thing and they love what they're doing, and just make sure they have contact information back to you.
Yeah.
So that if they're in need. In fact, this past week, the announcer to track, him and I have been messenger back and forth. He's been in and out of hospital with some issues. So, and there's others at the track that they live in another state and we contact through Facebook. So just being, again, rule number one, be available.
Yeah, sure.
And any way you can see fit to be able to help them. It was another piece to that I was going to say about availability.
Okay.
First thing I did at Elk Creek Dragway that kind of, I think, caught some of their attention. There's a group of ladies, and it's usually ladies, that work the concession stand. And the first Saturday that I was there, they actually had a lot more cars there than they expected. And the concession stand at lunchtime was really backed out the door. And I just stepped in and just started taking over and making sure the food got out the window. I got a big, loud voice.
Yeah.
So I used what talent and gift I had.
There you go.
And I just got in a hot room with these ladies and just made sure that our racers and fans was taken care of with getting their food to them. And I did that for like 2 hours.
Wow.
And they're like, you're a pastor, you're the ministry. And I'm like, I ministered to everybody that was there. You don't ask for it. You just step in where needed, where a spot is needed.
Well, you do. I've talked to a lot of guys involved in Raceway Ministries, and it's amazing how many of them have flipped hamburgers, how many of them have stubbed tickets. They've served as ushers up in the grandstands. You just have to be available for everything and anything. Not too different from being a pastor. I know from being a pastor, especially in single-staff churches, sometimes if something's going to get done, you just got to roll up your sleeves and do it.
Amen.
And at the Speedway, you're part of the family, and you're trying to be part of the family. And if you want to be part of the family, get in the kitchen with them. That'll get their attention, and it'll build relationships. Well, listen, you were at our annual conference virtually back in January, and really appreciated your involvement there. It was great to see you up on the screen and all the other people there when we were doing some interaction through Zoom and that kind of thing. What do you see as the value of connecting with other people that are involved in Raceway Ministries work? It's been my observation that you can go out there and be a lone wolf if you want to, but there's some value in connecting with other folks. What do you see as maybe the value in being connected with other people in Raceway Ministries?
I think it's several pieces there. For me, being connected with others is getting different ideas. Yeah. Being able to bounce, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, but what is it you do? And being able to listen to these different podcasts you're doing with these other folks. Yeah, we've got a way of doing things, but we can always serve in a better form, and other people are doing that.
Yeah.
So one is learning from each other, and I think another thing is we learn the names of the different folks in this ministry as a group. We can definitely encourage each other.
You bet.
And, when we all get down, you always need more people praying.
Sure.
As we have opportunity to maybe travel into areas just to be visiting.
Sure.
It's a great opportunity for other chaplains then to be able to go to another track and just watch and observe. And I hope to take advantage of that in the near future is to be able to watch somebody else do their ministry and plug in where I can. And, I always say, okay, I'm going to go and just watch, but it just seems like I go and I just want to serve, But,
I know how that goes.
But for me, that's where it's at, is learning from others to do what we do and do it better, because there's always a better way to glorify God in everything that we do.
Yeah, you bet.
And brothers and sisters out there, they've done this a long time too, and also just camaraderie, to know that we're all in this together. We're not alone. And if you got questions, you got other people you can lean on. You may need help from these other folks, and it'd be great to see that happen.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And it seems to be getting better all the time. One of the side effects of the pandemic has been we have been forced to expand our relationships through Zoom meetings and podcasts and virtual stuff, Facebook and whatnot, because we haven't been able to get together with one another physically. And I think that's going to pay some big dividends, because it just expands the opportunities for us to do what you described. Learn from each other, encourage each other, pray for one another. To me, there's nothing better than actually traveling and visiting and being with somebody at a Speedway to see what they do. But until we're able to do that again, we have a lot of opportunities virtually to be able to do that. And so it's going to be exciting to see how it unfolds once the pandemic kind of settles down. But I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road. And man, I'd love to come up and hang out with you at a event there at Elk Creek as the year unfolds. Well, listen, I know that ministry can get expensive. You have gasoline you have to buy. Sometimes you have to buy a shirt. Sometimes you have to pay for sound systems and other things, equipment that you use there at the Speedway. It's not really cheap. And some people are very blessed. They have money that they've accumulated wealth through the years, and so they use that in ministry. Other people just step into it and they don't have any resources at all. Everybody seems to be different. But I know it's expensive and it takes resources. So if someone was listening and they said, Man, David McNew's got a lot going on out there at Elk Creek Dragway, and as the year opens up and the pandemic ceases, it's going to get busy. I'd really like to support him. How can a person offer some support to your ministry out there at Elk Creek?
Well, I am working on trying to get everything lined up to where they can make a donation to Victory Lane Ministry.
Okay.
But one of the biggest needs that I'm going to have, and I learned last year as I'm getting older, making 6 trips down at the end of the day, it's 1 mile, but making 6 trips down that 1 mile drag strip and talking with everybody going up and down hills, I'm probably going to end up needing a golf cart before long.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that would be my biggest thing right now. My wife and I are trying to figure out, okay, can we get a golf cart and then get it to the track and just have a place to park it? And we do have that, but getting a golf cart is right now on my list of things that's going to be a need.
Okay.
Victory Lane Ministry, I'm getting that set up to where we can start receiving things coming in.
I'm kind of like you. I'm 69 years old now. I remember a few years ago I went to Indianapolis Motor Speedway to explore ministry possibilities there, and they told me, why don't you come 2 summers in a row and go over the grounds here at Indianapolis Speedway during race weekends and then come back and tell us what you want to do. Well, I didn't have a golf cart, and so, at the Brickyard 400 in summertime when it was hot, I was walking all over that place, and it just about killed me. I can't imagine doing that now at 69. I hear your plea for a golf cart, brother. And if anybody out there has a golf cart, please call and let David know. My heart goes out to you, man. Okay. How do they get in touch with you at Victory Lane Ministry? Do you guys have a P.O. box, an address? How would somebody contact you and say, I've got a golf cart. It's been sitting out in my garage for 2 years, and I'm ready to put it in the hands of somebody who can use it. How would they get in touch with you to make that donation?
Well, they can call my number, 276-525-2786. That's directly to me.
Well, David, let's talk about how a person can contribute to your Victory Lane Ministries. Now, you're going to be taking advantage of a partnership opportunity with National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries that will allow you to participate in National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries group exemption. Do you mind if I share with our listeners exactly how that works?
Absolutely. Go for it. That'd be great.
All right, good. There are several ways, by the way, that a Raceway Ministry team or a chaplain can actually become a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, which will allow donors to make tax-deductible contributions. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize this, but charitable contributions are deductible, of course, on the itemized Schedule A part of the IRS paperwork. But not everybody does the long form Schedule A anymore. So everybody needs to know that now the IRS is allowing $300 of deductions on Form 1040. Now that's not a lot, but gosh, $300 is $300. So if people don't go the long form, they now can deduct some of their charitable donations on the Form 1040 when they file their taxes for each year. As I said, though, there are some options for becoming tax exempt as a 501c3 organization. A person can make application for 501c3 by filing the Form 1023. And I want to tell you, David, if you want to file the long 1023 form, more power to you, but it is complicated, and they ask for more details than you can ever imagine. But fortunately, the IRS has shortened that, and they have a Form 1023-EZ, and it's a lot shorter. It's for charitable organizations and nonprofits and ministries that predict that within the first 3 years, they'll take in less than $50,000. And for most of us, that's a starting point. So if a person wanted to become a 501c3 on their own, they can file the Form 1023. It's kind of a lengthy process, kind of detailed, but you send it in, the IRS may come back to you and ask for more information, and it can take months. But once you've done it, it's done. And it's only a one-time $275 fee, I think, for the Form 1023-EZ. Now, some Raceway Ministry teams, on the other hand, are based out of a church or based out of some denominational entity such as a Baptist association. And under that arrangement, particularly with a church, the donations can be made directly to the church, and then they can be named for the ministry, indicating that the donation is for that Raceway Ministry outreach. And then the church church takes the donations and then they turn around and provide those donations back to the ministry. But that's an agreement that has to be made with the church. Now, if it's under a denominational group exemption, like a Baptist association or a Baptist state convention or something like that, donations typically can be made directly to the Raceway Ministry group if they have the IRS EIN, Employment Identification Number, and they're set up as a subordinate under that group exemption. And we have several Raceway Ministry teams that function that way. I believe Texas Alliance Raceway Ministries at Texas Motor Speedway functions that way under Denton Baptist Association. I think Martinsville functions under the Henry County Baptist Association. And so they have that kind of arrangement. But the third option is to become a 501c3, what the IRS calls a subordinate, under a 501c3 group exemption, which is what we have with the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. We filed for that several years ago, and down through the years we've had several different Raceway Ministry teams come up under our group exemption. Now here's how that works, and I'm going to use you as an example if that's okay. You mind?
That'd be great.
Okay. First of all, you have to get that EIN. That's the Employment Identification Number. And I think you already have yours if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. Do.
All right. And then you become a partner, what we used to call a member of the NFRM. And if I understand it correctly, you have already put in your paperwork to become a partner with the NFRM. It's not a huge process. It's just a matter of letting us know that you want to do that. And I think you've already let us know that you want to become a partner with NFRM.
Absolutely. That's been done.
All right, good. Man, you're well on your way. Now, the other thing that we have to do is the IRS requires some paperwork, questions to be answered. And it's just a series of questions that basically make sure that you're on board with the same purposes, same goals, and so forth as the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. And I'll be sending to you that questionnaire that you just kind of check off and go through it. And it has a couple of other things there that you need to do. The IRS requires a organizational statement of some kind. It doesn't have to be articles of incorporation or anything like that. You don't have to become incorporated, but you just need some kind of statement that describes the purpose of your organization. And I'll send you information about that. It's not really complicated at all. And then what we do is we add your information to a list of what the IRS calls subordinates. And we turn in that list every year just before October of each year. They ask that we turn it in just before 90 days until the end of the calendar year. So we do that every October. And I think currently we have 4 ministries that are on that list and have been for some time. So what we'll do is, given the fact that you have already become a partner with NFRM and you have your EIN and all that stuff, we'll add your information to that list. We'll turn it in just before October of this year. And then your 501c3 status becomes effective January 1st of the next year, which in our case will be 2022. And at that point, contributions can be made directly to Victory Lane Ministries at whatever address you choose to share, or if you want to put a PayPal button on a website or something like that, you can take donations directly to Victory Lane Ministries after January the 1st. But meanwhile, before we get to 2021, this is what our listeners need to understand. Before 2021 gets here, if somebody wants to designate to Victory Lane Ministries, they can donate that to National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries with a notation that it's for Victory Lane Ministries, and then we'll make sure that that donation gets to where it needs to go, to you and Victory Lane Ministries. So, how does that sound?
Sounds great. Looking forward to that.
Well, good. Well, listen, I just want to make sure that our listeners understand that you're fully in the process of becoming part of our group exemption with NFRM, and the donations don't have to wait until January the 1st. They can go ahead and submit them to the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and we in turn will get that to you. Now, what they need to do if they want to donate is they can do one of two things. They can make their check out to National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries with the notation that it goes to Victory Lane Ministries, and send it to 2743 Henry Street, Box 109 in Muskegon, Michigan 49441. And if a person goes to our website, racewayministries.org, they can go to the Support Us page and they'll find that address there. Now, if they want to donate to you by virtue of PayPal, they can also do that on our website. There's a place there for them to put in all their information to make a PayPal donation, and the only thing they need to do when they make a donation that way is to make sure that they note somehow on the donation, and they can either do it as they pay through PayPal. If the PayPal button gives them an opportunity to make a memo to say something about the donation, they can designate it there, or they can send us an email and make sure that we understand that that donation is for Victory Lane Ministries, and then we can make sure that that gets to you even if it's a PayPal donation. So before January 1st, that's the way they would do it. After January the 1st, they would make that donation directly to Victory Lane Ministries. Now, David, we've already talked about golf carts. And again, let me stress this. I understand the need for a golf cart. And I pray that somebody out there has one sitting around that they just can't wait to get it in your hands so that you can use it, go up and down that drag strip. That would be absolutely awesome. But I'm sure there are plenty of other things that you might think of that people could donate for. I think at this point it'd be a great idea for us to just give them some examples of things that you have in mind that are necessary for the ministry, but certainly require the support and donations that people might want to offer. What kind of things would fit into that category?
Well, thank you for the opportunity here to be able to share that part. As we learned from earlier when we had our large meeting, that majority of us guys that are doing the small tracks, everything that goes on in the ministry is pretty much comes out of our pocket.
That's right.
And so we in all these tracks like this, small tracks, need to support the small track. If there's a ministry there, great opportunity to support it. I know all the guys and girls, they love having the decals on their cars.
Oh yeah.
Those get expensive, and shirts and hats, and I like to have it to where I just end up, instead of taking them to the track and trying to sell them and trying to make that money, that the money would come in and then I would just give the shirts away.
Yeah.
Especially the folks that are coming and helping and doing those things. Of course, you got gas, and you got one of the biggest things that I'm going to throw out there is we do a chapel service. We got about 30 minutes each time to do a chapel service at both tracks we're going to be at.
Okay.
And I like to have it to where I can get some folks come in. If they've got some music, if they can sing and got some music talent, and they want to line up a date with me, and they want to come in and be able to do that, and I am very open to
Good.
that helps ministry out. My wife sings, does a great job at that, but she's not able to make it every single time.
Sure.
But to have have a variety of folks where, the just like in your church, you like to have a little variety. Well, this
Absolutely.
is no different where we have that. So there's a lot of ways that this is going to help the ministry. One of the things that I'll add, that Easter, that we're going to put a basket together for our children. We're going to put a cup with Victory Lane Ministry on it. It's going to be stuffed with stuff in the cup for the adults. We're going to give that away at Easter.
Oh, awesome.
So the holidays that are coming up, different ones that they celebrate at the track, I like to be involved in those.
Sure.
So everything that comes in goes right back into the ministry.
You bet.
And so anything like those things that I mentioned would really help out tremendously in the years to come.
Well, a lot of people I know, if they're involved with a large church or if they're involved with a denominational organization of some kind, many times there's a budget line item that the ministry can use to supply the very things that you just mentioned. But there are lots of times too, and I would suggest most of the time, especially when you're at a local venue, a local dirt track or a short circle track, or if you're at a drag strip such as you, especially if you're a small ministry, you don't always have the luxury of having those organizations back you with a budget line item. And so very much so it comes out of your own pocket. And what I would like for our listeners to understand is the expenses can really add up. In addition to the things that you have listed, many times our chaplains and our workers at the small venues, they have to pay for their own meals at the track. They don't always get hamburgers donated to them out of the concession stand. I know some guys that have to pay their own pit pass fee every time they go out there. If you have somebody to come out and sing, such as you just suggested, and what a great idea to have a variety of people come out, because if you're out there with the same guys for 18 or 25 weekends out of the year, they like a little variety too. And if you have a guest person come in there to provide the music for a chapel service, you'd really like to pay them. It wouldn't necessarily be a big fee, but buy them a gift card to Sonic or something, just to say thank you. All that stuff adds up and it takes money. And so what we're looking at here is people that come on board with you and in essence sponsor what you're doing out there and provide the necessary funding to let you do a bang up job out there at the venue where you're doing ministry. And so the support and the donations, it means so much, so much. And as people get to know you and as they get to understand your heart for ministry and see the scope of what you're trying to do, they should catch on to that and they should be able to see the financial need part of it, and hopefully they'll contribute. We just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to pave the way for them to make those donations. So if anybody's out there listening, our prayer is that you'll support Victory Lane Ministries and David McNew 100%. So David, man, we wish you well out there, and our prayer is that you'll just get an abundance of donations.
Absolutely, sir. We much appreciate it. We always talk about that. How much does it cost to see one soul changed, and there's no limit on that. And just to be able to reach people and to love them, and to just show them Christ and that love is really valuable. And that's really the key to this whole thing, is just loving them like Jesus would.
Absolutely. Well, I pray that our listeners will get behind it 100%. Well, listen, it's been a joy to visit with you, David. Thank you so much for taking your time to share some great thoughts with us about Raceway Ministries, whether it's at a drag strip or a circle track, anywhere. Some of the things that you have shared are key insights into the way Raceway Ministries ought to go. And I just appreciate you so much. It's been a joy to relate to you through the years, and I just pray that as this year unfolds, your ministry at Elk Creek will just explode and be better and bigger than anything you ever dreamed.
Yes, sir. I much appreciate you. I do have an announcement that I'd like to add here at the end.
Okay, good.
An hour before we started this process, I had sent a messenger to Motor Mile Dragway.
Okay.
I sent that out to them probably a couple weeks ago. An hour before we got on, I got a message from them saying that they are interested and want me to come aboard their track also to be a chaplain there. And the chaplaincy at Motor Mile Dragway and Elk Creek Dragway will coincide with each other because the two tracks are joining together, and they have a deal going that whenever Elk Creek has a points race, Motor Mile does not, and when Elk Creek doesn't, Motor Mile will have that. So
wow.
I will be available to be at both tracks. Next Friday, I'll be meeting with the folks at Motor Mile Dragway. And there's someone there that most folks listening to this will know. Rusty Wallace is the new owner and promoter at Motor Mile Raceway and the drag strip.
Oh, so terrific.
I'm not sure he'll be in that meeting or not, but he is one of them that is over Motor Mile now. And so I will have a lot of the same folks at Elk Creek that will be at Motor Mile. So
wow, that is exciting stuff. Well, listen, I appreciate you sharing that with us, because that'll help us to know how to pray for you and to wait with great anticipation for how that develops. Man, that's exciting. So congratulations to you, and praise the Lord for open opportunities. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate you so much, man. And to all of our listeners out there today, we've been visiting with David McNew. David is the chaplain at Elk Creek Dragway, soon to be the chaplain at Motor Mile as well. He's been sharing with us a lot of great insights about how to do ministry with competitors, fans, families, staff, and all kinds of people in the drag racing world. So thank you all for listening today. We pray that as you move along through the road course of life, that God will keep you safe and bless you with great blessings, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Victory Lane. This is Roger Marsh with the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and we appreciate you tuning in today for our podcast with Raceway Ministries Today. Well, thanks so much for tuning in for today's podcast. We'll look forward to having you join us for the next edition of Raceway Ministries Today.